This video is brought to you by my patrons, my thoughts and opinions, sources, and annoyance. Hello, and welcome to, or back to, my channel. I'm Kit, and earlier this year, Arielle Scarcella, Blaire White, and Amir Odom took turns blaming the backlash against LGBTQ+ rights on trans people. I'm going to state up front that this video contains a lot of transphobia, so if you're not in the headspace for that, save yourself and exit this video now. For those of you that are still here, I'm sorry. But besides spreading misinformation, there's something important that Arielle, Blaire, and Amir are overlooking, forgetting, pretending doesn't matter. Anyway, in January 2025, Arielle published, "The downfall of LGBT rights is here thanks to these idiots," followed by Blaire in February, "The downfall of the trans community, they fucked around and found out," and finally Amir in May, "Why the UK and US are going after trans people." Their videos are not so surprisingly similar, though Amir, well, we'll get to him eventually. We're diving right in, and first, let's talk about Arielle's video. She does that thing where she pretends to be both viewpoints again, and it's about as compelling as the first time she did it. So, to save us all time and a headache, her own description of this video.
Most conservative fears about gay marriage leading to societal collapse has come true. People are identifying as animals. Polyamory is everywhere. Trust me, I would know. I'm on like every dating app. Kids are being transed and more.
None of that is true, but more on that later.
Gay parents don't make kids gay or trans, although queer parents, on the other hand, there's a little bit of nuance here. Because funnily enough, it is usually the white, suburban, middle-class moms and dads that are straight that are having all these trans and queer kids who are actually not LGBT.
Citation needed.
Bestiality or people identifying as animals.
Arielle does know those aren't the same things, right?
Parents have talked about their kids being around other kids in schools that are using litter boxes in the bathroom.
That has been debunked so many times. No, kids aren't using litter boxes at school, and it is so sad we've come to a point in society where such nonsense is being not only believed, but repeated without a second thought. Doesn't Arielle encourage her audience to call out the BS? Well, I guess she doesn't mean her own. Anyway, on to Blaire, who also so kindly, succinctly sums up her video.
Is this the part where I say, "I told you so"? It started with weird pronouns being born in gender studies classes that no one took seriously until laws popped up compelling people's speech. Suddenly we had bathroom bills as if society or even transsexuals ever had issues navigating basic human functions. What was once one or two underage transition stories in tiny liberal European countries became friend groups of teenage girls in every American city transitioning together. And then everyone had to look at men beating women's asses in sports, children undergoing chemical castration and sex change surgeries, men in women's prisons, nudity at the White House, senators who can't define what a woman is.
Thanks, Blaire. So I'm just going to be blunt. Trans people are not the least of our problems. They are not a problem. Speech is not being compelled. Bigotry has been frowned upon, more or less, for a long time, and no, you won't go to jail for misgendering someone. Trans women are not threatening cis women in bathrooms. No one asks for bathroom bills except conservatives who need something to fearmonger about, otherwise no one will vote for them. No, minors aren't transitioning en masse, and social contagion isn't a thing. No, learning that gay or trans people exist doesn't make kids gay or trans. No, men aren't beating women's asses in sports, and apparently it hasn't occurred to Blaire that everyone will have their own definition about what is a woman, what is a man, and you won't always agree with their response. And that's okay. I am so annoyed right now, but I brought this upon myself. Maybe combining this trio wasn't the best idea, but I'm committed, and I'm also compelled to tell you all that Blaire is also freaking out about some books. This book is gay, recommended ages 14 to 17, genderqueer, recommended age 18 plus, and let's talk about it, recommended ages 14 to 17. To hear her tell it, these books are for 6-year-olds. And you know, if you have some books you don't want your kids reading, that's your prerogative as their parent. But that doesn't mean you get to ban it for everyone else. Parents aren't the gatekeepers of what is allowed to be read or published. All that being said, I'm going to put links to Last Week Tonight with John Oliver's episode about trans athletes, as well as a Reads with Rachel video about book banning. And now we move on to Amir.
Because we protect children because they're vulnerable, they're still growing, they're learning. We don't want anything to happen to them. Hence why they can't smoke, hence why they can't drink, hence why they can't vote, because we know they are still growing and they are still learning. Same for women. They are just in generally smaller and weaker than men at large, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're just literally biologically different.
Pro tip, if you want to stand up for women, don't liken us to children. Thanks. Anyway, Amir is weirdly fixated on genitals and food, but he leads us to the same place.
The masculine butch lesbians, they're starting to run into way more problems now because of the trans women.
No. Cis women running into problems because they aren't deemed feminine enough are not having those problems because of trans women. They're having those problems because of people like Amir and Blaire and Arielle. People who have no media literacy, or, well, pretend they don't, and further one-off stories, usually with no source, with breathless reports about how trans women, always trans women, curiously, never trans men, are doing these awful, horrible things, and won't someone think of the women and children? But in reality, they don't care. They don't care about children. They don't care about women. They care about the money that shows up on their bank account after they make inflammatory post after inflammatory post. This is disgusting. And may I remind everyone that we already have laws. We don't need special laws that only apply to trans people. And at that...
But even more relevant than the legal backlash is definitely the cultural backlash that's occurring right now that I have been screaming about from the rooftops and warning about for the past decade, that if the trans community and the LGBT community in general didn't shape up and act right, was going to happen. And now the day has come.
Are you trans or are you a woman? If you're a trans woman, that means you're not a woman because you're transitioning for a reason. And even though you're transitioning, you are still nothing more than a very, 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 very flamboyant cosplaying a biological man. That's not hateful. That's not bigoted. I have trans friends. I respect them. We hang out. We kick it all the time. But they know what they are. If more people just acknowledge what they were, we wouldn't be here today. We really wouldn't. If you just acknowledge what you were and stop trying to demand all these hate speech laws, demand to be invited in these spaces, stop crying to victim here, victim that, we wouldn't.
As I mentioned at the start of this video, Blaire, Amir, and Arielle forget something very important. It doesn't matter if you don't like someone, it doesn't matter if you find someone annoying or cringe, or if you would never do what they do. You don't get to take rights away from them. That is not how human rights work. They aren't only for people we like, people we agree with. That is not hard to understand, so I don't buy for 1 second that these three and their fellows don't understand that. They're just trying to make the loss of rights palatable to their audiences. Yeah, things look bleak right now, but you know, it was their own fault. If only they had shut up, if only they had been normal, if only they had stayed off TikTok, this wouldn't be happening. Wrong. And what these three and people like them are doing is disgusting. They can add all the disclaimers they want, but by excusing the mistreatment of members of the LGBTQ+ community, they're okaying it. Because, after all, they went too far, they wanted too much, they were too weird. I don't know how these three sleep at night. So, final thoughts? As always, I'm unimpressed with Arielle. Blaire is so damn smug for no reason, and Amir, I hope he knows the Luppers never took him off the menu, no matter how much cover he provides. Anyway, I wanted to comment on this because I think sometimes we need to be reminded that human rights aren't like a favor we grant other people so long as they don't annoy us or anything. Human rights are human rights, full stop. And also, we have studies, articles, videos debunking these people time and time again. And still, people just buy into what they peddle without a second thought. I assume it's because it's easier and more comfortable to confirm your biases than to actually have to think about something, but damn. Can we please start thinking critically? I am begging. And that's it for this video. Please feel free to leave your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next one.